In this video I want to solve the problem of counting correct answers, this time exclusively using DAX instead of Power Query or VBA. The principle is based on the original video with Power Query where I use list transform. I want to loop through each person's answer, and for each answer I want to loop through the correct answers and say, can I find the current correct answer, and give a point. If I can't find it, give no points. And then lastly sum it. This is essentially a double loop, but the outer loop is solved by having each individual answer be a row inside my table. I got inspiration for this solution from the following link, which is centered around how you can create a for or a while loop in DAX. I first want to store the current person's answer in a variable to make it a bit easier to refer to. Next, I want to go through my correct answers table to add a new column where I want to check if I can find the current correct answer inside of my current answer. I do this by adding a column to the existing table. Here I'm inside of a row context in my correct answers table because I add a new column which will have a value for each row, which means I have to add an inner var return in order to store the current correct answer. Again, I just simply think this makes it a bit easier to understand. I want to grab only the correct answer and not my index column, which I haven't shown. The value I want to add in this new column is then a lookup between my current selected answer and my current correct answer. The value I want to add is then a lookup where I take my current correct answer and ask whether I can find that in my current selected answer. I want to do a search for my text, which is then the current correct answer that I'm trying to find within the text of current answer, and I want to start at 1, and if I can't find it I want to return blank. And the reason I return blank is that I'll add more after I've done this calculation. Because search is going to return the index position if I can find the answer. In the first row I won't find M&M or NF, so this calculation will return blank, and if I can find it, it returns the index position. That's why I can wrap this search in an isNumber function, which will then return true if I can find the correct answer and false if I can't. And lastly, I then want to use the outcome of this isNumber function to do an if, because I don't want to return true or false, I want to return 1 and 0. So if I can find the correct answer, I want to return 1, otherwise 0. And I need to mind my parentheses, because I'm now done adding a new column. I then want to sum the new column, which will then calculate the number of correct answers, which is simply sum x, but I have to sum over a calculated table or for loop where I want to grab the each answer column. I first want to show that this solution does work when I'm inside of this filter context, because this measure is then calculated for each row and there's only one row. So if I simply add this, it will count exactly what I expect. This measure works, but I don't consider it to be perfect because I can show that it won't work if I have multiple rows. I'm inside of the table view where I can add a new column to my table, which will show that the measure only works if I'm inside of a row context. If I have multiple rows like I do in this view, it won't work. But in a real life scenario, you'd want to add measure to a table, which would then have a row context. So it's not a big deal, but I just want to show it to be thorough. If I copy this code and then add a new column to my table, you can see that it outputs 2 for every single row. And this is because it actually doesn't look at the individual rows. It will do the calculation for each row and then grab the largest value. In this case, I have a row where I have 2 correct answers, then the output of my calculation will be 2 in each column. And that's because my measure doesn't deal with the context transition that you have to do when you're trying to add a new column. But to repeat myself, you shouldn't add a new column, since this is a calculation that you'll only do when you're inside of a visual and you want to do it for whatever rows you've shown. So the measure is fine as long as you don't try to add a new column. So, yep,